Great pleasure to welcome with us today a man who has written a very interesting book. It's called The Corner Office. He also writes a column with that same title as the deputy editor of the New York Times. It's called Indispensable and Unexpected Lessons from CEOs and How to Lead and Succeed. We're joined today by Adam Bryant. Adam, thanks for being with us. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Enjoyed reading through the book. Always kind of been a person interested in the business news. You've been covering that beat for a while. I guess the last couple of years, it's probably been even more than even you expected, right, to be on that beat.
No, the world seems to be getting crazier, and certainly has been over the last few years. And spent 20 years as a business journalist and interviewed a lot of CEOs and asked them about their strategy and their company and their stock performance. And what really led to the creation of Corner Office was just a sense that there was something more there, that I found myself wanting to ask them more, how they do what they do, not what they do, and just as importantly, how did they learn to do what they do? And so I said, well, why don't I create a feature where I don't ask them a single question about their company, and that's what led to the Corner Office, and then that led to the book.
Were most of the people you contacted initially receptive to talking about that? Sometimes CEOs, at least in the past, were kind of secretive, weren't they? They didn't want to give away too many secrets about their business.
Yeah, well, it's not so much about the business as about themselves.
Right.
It goes to their questions of personality and how open and candid and honest they are. And to launch the feature, I reached out to some CEOs who I'd gotten to know through the years, knowing that they'd be a good fit for that. And then once people saw what it was and that the conversations was about leadership lessons and not about bullet point strategy, they started coming to me, and so I could kind of make my choices based on who struck me as interesting.
The structure of businesses obviously has changed a lot in the last few years, with obviously companies outsourcing overseas and the whole structure of a business in general. That must have been kind of interesting to talk to them about that, right? How the leadership has had to change in the corporate structure.
It has, and it's a tough economy, and I think leaders more and more recognize that the competitive advantage, the way they're going to succeed, is by getting more out of their people. Because if you assume a couple of things, the economy is going to skid along sideways for a while, and that a lot of these companies have cut to the bone already, then what do? Well, you innovate. And how do you innovate? You create a culture where people are passionate and committed and feel like their ideas are welcome and used, and that there's a real sense of teamwork. So in many ways, it's back to basics. The sort of high-flying theories about leadership in the past, I think it really comes back to, simple notions about leadership and getting the most out of people.
When I was at Adelphi, I had a business degree from there, and you look back at some of the courses you took, and really a lot of what they taught you back then really has not very little to do with the way businesses are run today, don't they? And that was only in the 80s.
Yeah, and it's still true today. I mean, a lot of the CEOs said, I had an MBA, I studied all these things. They'll say, I should have studied psychology, or I should have studied organizational behavior, because I think they recognize after a few years that ultimately it's all about people, right, and how to get the most out of people. And what I came to appreciate was that these CEOs, it's like they're master psychologists. They really get human nature. When they talk about how they interview job candidates, they come up with very creative questions to get people off their scripts and to get an insight into what really makes people tick. They've been very impressive on that front of sort of understanding human nature and psychology.
The hierarchy of an office has changed as well. It used to be maybe one guy was the total boss and everybody just did what he or she said, but that has changed. You got the team environments now and all that kind of thing. So that's different, isn't it, in the last 10 or 15 years?
It certainly is. I mean, that sort of old-style militaristic command and control hierarchy, it might have worked, back in the day, but it's not the way the world works now, and it's not the way to get the most out of people. It's a global economy. It's very fast-moving, and a lot of work is done in team settings, and sometimes ad hoc teams pulled together from across disciplines. And it's those skills of working with teams, and this is, you mentioned university, a lot of the big business schools are reorienting their curriculum to be much more about leadership and teamwork. And they still teach the silo stuff about accounting, marketing, but there's a recognition that it's all about working in a team that's going to be essential for the future.
Can you give a quick example or two of some of the CEOs you talked to, maybe one that stood out, something you didn't expect them to tell you?
It often came up in the questions that they would ask job candidates that really surprised me. I'll give you one example. Tony Hsieh, who runs Zappos, he will ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, how weird are you? And that's not something that most people, I think, are prepared for. Some CEOs will ask, what's the meaning of life? Or just tell me about yourself. Tony Hsieh asks another question that's interesting. He'll say, what's the biggest misperception that people have about you? And then he'll listen to the answer, and then he'll ask, well, what's the difference between misperception and perception? Right? Because perception is reality. And so it's those kind of like clever insights and questions that nobody can prepare for, really, that I found kind of surprising.
In addition to the hierarchy of a business, of course, technology the last 15, 20 years, people can work out of their homes. Now that kind of adds a whole dynamic to how do you manage people that are working independently, right? That's different, isn't it?
It's so true. I mean, a CEO I interviewed recently said that they took the risk and went into a no vacation policy. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have any vacation, but it's not, they said, we're not going to say you have 4 weeks and then you start getting, well, there's comp time here and then you have to go to the dentist in the morning. And they said that that's not the way the world works. I mean, people are working all the time. It's much more fluid. They're working at home. They're working on the bus or the train. So as long as you have clear goals, then you can take your vacation time. And I don't know, it's a big risk for a lot of people, I think, would be uncomfortable in that situation. But to me, it's probably a sign of the times and of things to come. That because of, as you say, it's because of technology, a lot of us have 3 shifts, right? There's the morning email session over coffee at home, you go to work, and then there's the 3rd shift over email late at night before you go to bed.
That's true. You're always kind of tied to the computer, and it is really kind of developing on more of a minute-by-minute basis as opposed to year-by-year, right? The technology, how it's changing everything. So
and it's happening so fast.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody seems to have an iPad now on my morning train ride.
Well, it's a great book. It's called The Corner Office. We've been talking with Adam Bryant. Adam, you have a website you want to direct people to? Get a hold of you in the book?
Sure. nytimes.com and search Corner Office. All the interviews are archived there, more than 100 CEO interviews. And my personal website is AdamBryantBooks, all one word.com.
Great, Adam. Been a pleasure to talk to you as a former New Yorker myself. Look forward to maybe meeting you in person sometime, but thanks for being with us today.
I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.